There we go. Hi, everybody. I am going to actually try to make sure that we are live on not just LinkedIn, but also on Instagram. So hopefully it's working. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Yogesh Chavda. I am the founder of Y2S Consulting. And today I am so excited to have Cam Berard on our show. Um, I, in full transparency, I've been following Cam for about a couple of months now on TikTok. She came across my For You page, and there was something that she said in one of her videos that kind of like caught my attention. And I was like, let me start following her. And the more I followed her, I had more and more questions that I was starting to develop in my own head. So I finally reached out to her and I said, hey, would you be open to coming on my podcast? And she graciously accepted to come on. So Cam, welcome to the show today. So,
Thank you so much for having me, Yogesh.
well, listen, I have a bunch of questions to ask you, and but before we go down the questioning path, basically, why don't we first start with asking you a simple question, which is tell us who you are and what's your background, what are you doing professionally, what are you doing personally, and then we'll get into the personal part of the conversation in a bit. So,
Yeah, so this is a question I actually always have a hard time answering because I've never liked introducing myself, leading with my profession.
yeah,
But that was also at a time in my life where I didn't really identify with what I was doing. I was working in pro sports. I built my career in strategy, which
yeah.
I was very good at and I enjoyed. But then post divorce, I started dating again and realizing that I was creating a life that more represented who I was finally.
Hmm.
And that's when I started leaning into helping others. And so yes, now I have left the corporate world and I am a dating and relationship coach that specializes in the non-traditional relationship dynamics, particularly thruples, but all polyamorous dynamics and kind of unconventional families, and helping people get started.
Right.
Because
So
Lord knows I did not come from that background at all.
right, exactly, right. So here's the thing, right? There was when I started, looking at your background and your profile, I was kind of like, thinking about like, hey, what is the structure of family today, right? And back in the 70s, or not even back in the 70s, even today, the stereotypical view is it's a husband, wife, two kids, and a dog kind of, mindset, right?
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, what is the breakdown in terms of family structure? And what completely shocked me was the fact that what I just described represents 18% of American households.
That is
That's it,
wild. That's so
right?
wild.
Exactly, right? Because but back in the 70s it was more than like, 50 to 60%. So it's completely changed, the family structure and family unit has changed dramatically. And you mentioned about, what you're focusing on, and it kind of like got me thinking about the fact that okay, the family structures are changing this way, and what you're doing is kind of like on the forefront of what's actually happening with culture and with family anyways. And that's what really got me curious about wanting to talk to you, because you're seeing things that I know I'm not seeing at all. you know and
Yeah.
that's why I thought this would be a great conversation to have. So tell me about your family structure, and then tell me how you're applying it, in terms of the work you're doing as well. So
Yeah. So, um, as I mentioned, I had been in 11-year monogamous hetero traditional marriage, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then post divorce, I kind of discovered in my dating process that I became polyamorous and accidentally ended up in a throuple, and
Okay.
that was purely through my own exploration of my bisexuality. We did not intend to become a throuple. We started out just exploring for fun because we had a great connection, good chemistry, good vibes, enjoyed
Hmm.
time with each other. And before we knew it, we had fallen in love and
Hmm.
didn't know what to do with that other than we knew that this was not the type of love that came along very often and that we had to say yes. So we figured out really quickly that we needed to find a way to make a family unit out of that because
Hmm.
we had determined we didn't want to do life without each other. And so a lot of that meant, how do we factor that into a family dynamic with my son that was from my previous marriage? He's 12 years old.
Hmm.
And that was going to be such a huge part in knowing, like, if we could do this, if we
Hmm.
could create a family structure that just didn't look like anything else. And lo and behold, the kiddo was fully on board from the get-go.
Hmm.
He didn't question it at all. He was happy. He wanted them to move in right away.
Hmm.
And so now they have fully embraced their roles as bonus parents, and it, we just operate like a normal family. We all live together. We
Hmm.
all share those household chores. We all share those parenting responsibilities, and the amount of support that we all have from that, our son included,
Hmm.
is just astronomical compared to what it was like in a traditional two-person relationship dynamic.
Oh, I can completely understand. So, like, there's, I can go in so many different directions in terms of questions. So let me first start with you in particular, right? So you
Okay.
as a person, you're going into the situation. I'm just thinking about like the timeline of and the sequence of events that must have happened in your mind
Yeah.
as you're going through this process, right? Of like, hey, I've just gotten divorced. I'm exploring, you know, my situation, and now you're suddenly facing this as an option. You must have had your own fears and hesitancies and your own sets of questions, I would imagine, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, when when feelings started to strongly develop, it was
Yeah.
first, "Well, I need to put a stop to this. This isn't normal, right?" I
Right.
challenged
Yeah.
the normalcy of it right away,
Yeah.
and therefore questioned the legitimacy of not only the feelings but the possibilities of the future, because I already had a an idea of what I wanted my relationship future to look like, right? I didn't know if I wanted to get married again, but I knew I
Hmm.
wanted a partner in life, and I knew that I wanted a partner in life that would be willing to grow with me and evolve with me over time as we grow and evolve and change as people, because our wants and needs change, constantly. So it's really, really hard to be 100% of what somebody needs 100% of the time over time. So I wanted somebody that would be open-minded enough to grow with me into something that, if one of us ever wasn't happy in the relationship any longer, we would find a way to grow together so that, we didn't just abandon a love that we had.
Hmm.
And this relationship posed me with so many questions and so many challenges, every reason in the book to, stay away from it, because it could have just been too challenging, too unconventional. We wouldn't be accepted. People would challenge it. People would
Yeah.
make assumptions. What about the kiddo, and would he suffer for it?
Right.
Um, Not, I knew he wouldn't suffer at home for it, but what would his social circle look like? So protecting
Right.
him
Hmm.
was the first priority in finding out how we could do it. And yeah, there were so many questions swirling in my mind in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, and they just met me with love and support at every turn, and solutions and collaboration. And we just became this team that,
Hmm.
it was the kind of love that I really felt seen in and felt validated in continuously,
Hmm. Hmm.
that I knew whatever challenges were going to come our way as we navigated that journey, that we could do it together. Because every time we ran into any sort of problem, we came out of it stronger. And I don't know a lot of relationships like that. So it just continuously built that trust element within what we had, and where we were going with it.
So as you were describing how you were going through your own fears and concerns, like you were talking about the present in terms of your kiddo, and then you're thinking about the future in terms of what could happen or what couldn't happen as a consequence of it. There was a trust building, like you mentioned, but there's also a confidence building component to it as well, which sounds very emotional to me. It doesn't sound like a rational conversation one bit at that point. Am I correct in that, or am I overinterpreting?
It's a little bit of both. So the trust was established through um, basically either conflict resolution or challenge resolution, right? Like a challenge, I would think of like a societal challenge, right?
Right.
As we are thinking about all the different ways, is this going to impact our careers? Is it going to impact us with our families? Are we going to lose friends over it?
Hmm.
Same thing for the kiddo, what our school and public functions going to look like with us as a family, all of
Hmm.
those challenges. So every time we tackled one of those hurdles together, it was reestablishing that confidence, as you said, in like, okay, no, we can all do this. And then if it was like an emotional conflict between the three of us of, is this real? Or, how can we all establish an equal relationship when they've been together for 10 years already? They've been
Hmm.
married for 8 years. And the three of us collectively have now been together for 2 years. So,
Hmm.
a lot of people that enter these dynamics, if it's a third person entering an existing relationship, a lot of
Hmm.
people get stuck on feeling as though they'll never be an equal or be able to catch up to that history, right? So
Yeah.
that does pose a lot of emotional challenges, whereas the more logistical challenges,
Yeah.
we did have to take from a very practical standpoint, and we were consistently trying to remove ourselves from that new relationship energy that a lot of polyamorous relationships in general encounter when you meet a new partner and you have those butterflies and that feeling of falling in love and being just exuberantly happy. um, we had to really temper the emotional side of feeling completely invincible and say,
Yeah.
okay, logistically, we have to think about this with a very realistic point of view. How are we going to tackle this? And we found that there weren't a ton of resources out there for the non-traditional. Like, there are some books, there are some podcasts,
Hmm.
but there's such a broad range in relationship types that there's no rule book on how to do thruple life, or
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
any of the non-traditional dynamics really. And so part of our solution was, well, let's see if we can help others by being public with our relationship,
Hmm.
um, and and really consistently challenging ourselves to to look at it from an outsider's point of view. And I think
Right.
that helps us remove ourselves a little bit from the emotional component and
Yeah.
stay logical and reasoned with how we're going about things.
That's incredible. So the fascinating part of what you're describing is that it's so right now about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and how your partners are feeling and thinking. Do you even have the time to think about what other people are thinking then about about the three of you together, basically?
We don't have the time for anything. Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah, time is a struggle, I think, for any busy family.
yeah,
But certainly for us, trying to coordinate three schedules, four schedules,
yeah,
it's a lot. And then,
yeah.
with we've fortunately never really cared what other people think. We're of the
Hmm.
mind that if if you are going to take judgment with how we love and who we love, and what our family looks like, then we don't need you in our lives anyway. So
Right.
for that, that's been very liberating. Have we actually lost anybody? No, we haven't. And that has also just kind of reinforced too that at the end of the day, most people really love love. And when they can see healthy love on display, it removes a lot of those stigmas and preconceptions and fears that people have
Mhm.
surrounding, some of those snap judgments that other people might make.
No, makes sense. And look, I know I grew up in India, not in India, but I'm of Indian heritage, but I've lived overseas, and lived in multiple countries and seen different cultures and things like that, right? And one of the biggest challenges that I've seen personally and witnessed personally, and maybe even experienced to a certain degree, is how families can put so much pressure on you on how you should live your life and how you should
Yeah.
you know conduct your relationship with your spouse and things like that. So and this is uh, forgive me for saying this, but like, no, this is in the traditional sense, right? So,
Yeah.
and here you are doing something that's considered to be non-traditional. So how do you deal with that? I'm just curious. Or do you deal with
Well,
that?
yeah, fortunately, we do not have any of those cultural or religious aspects or communities within our lives that would have created additional barriers for us.
Okay.
Um, I fully recognize that those are challenges that we don't have our own experience with. Um, and others, it makes it much harder for them because they're very tight knit within maybe their religious community or just a cultural community. Of when you have those groups that are so tight knit, there is a lot more pressure to conform to what is expected of you,
Hmm.
and personal happiness is not necessarily as big a part of that equation
Yeah.
as doing what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is unfortunate. Part of my whole business is rev dating. It's relish every vibe,
Hmm.
and it it really came as kind of my mantra post divorce of wanting to build that life that I was actually happy with, and that was more suitable to me. And I was doing what I wanted to do, and I wanted to relish everything that life had to give me. And that
Hmm.
meant not continuing to do the things that were making me miserable, like working in corporate America. I was very, very good at it, very successful, and it was
Hmm.
slowly killing me inside. And um, it, it, while traditional relationships certainly weren't, hurting me in any way,
Hmm.
uh, I wanted to be able to say yes to something when it found me, because I had had a great time dating in a more traditional sense. I didn't start polyamorous dating until a couple of years into or post divorce.
Yeah.
And, so it wasn't something that I necessarily needed in my life. But when it found me, I wanted to be willing to say yes, because you can go on wonderful dates, you can have wonderful experiences, meet incredible people, and you
Hmm.
can't force love to show up just because you want to find it.
Exactly.
But when it does find you, if you don't say yes to it, you're just slamming a door shut in your life.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't want to live that way. I wanted to say yes and keep opening doors and keep having new experiences, and seeing how good it could get.
Yeah.
Sorry for the tangent there.
No, no, it's not a tangent. Actually, you actually got me thinking about my personal life. In the sense that, you know, um, uh, uh, call it risk taking as another way to describe it. Like, but for me, I did that by living in different countries because I
Yeah.
was curious. I wanted to explore the world, and the international experience to me was super relevant and super important, right? So I didn't do it from a relationship perspective. I did it through my professional career perspective in that sense, right? But if you actually peel the onion, the core of it is exactly the same thing, which is that you
Yeah.
want to have those new experiences. You don't want to slam the door on something where there's an opportunity, kind of thing, right? And what's really fascinating is, when I think about my spouse, she grew up in a similar situation as well. She lived in different countries. Our son was born not in the US. He was born overseas. And as I hear him talk, he's talking about wanting to do something similar as well. So I think that's this curiosity factor and searching for those kinds of experiences, I think, is a common thing. It's a question of just where and how you go look for it, I
Yeah.
guess. And you found your path in that sense.
And honestly, travel is what led me to it as well, because
Really?
that was another big thing for me post divorce. Is, you know during my marriage, we had always talked about traveling more, and we just never did because work always got in the way. The schedules never lined up. It was never convenient. It was never the right time.
Yeah.
And after my divorce, I was like, I'm going to start traveling. I don't care if I am going alone or not. And I did. I started traveling by myself all over the world. And
Mm.
it was such an incredible experience, and it taught me so much about myself, about what I was capable of and how strong I was, and how sometimes you make a plan and you're going to deviate from it completely, or life is going to happen and that plan gets thrown out the window. And
Exactly.
you can create new plans, and you can just kind of explore and let life take you where it leads. And I
Mhm.
did that a lot in travel, right? I would show up to a place and not really have a plan of necessarily what I wanted to do, maybe a couple of things. And most of the time I would just explore and see where the day took me. And that always led to incredible experiences and meeting new people
Mhm.
and hearing new perspectives and just seeing a different way of life on display everywhere I went, and a much slower way of life, but a much happier and richer way of life, even though it's not that they're without their problems or that their countries are perfect. It's just that they have different priorities and uh, know how to live their life to the fullest.
Yep.
And I wanted to keep modeling that. So that's what started me on that role of starting to say yes, yes to more things, yes to asking questions, yes to always being curious. And
Yes.
so when this was starting to filter into my dating life, and I dated abroad, I dated
Okay.
different men from different countries,
Mhm.
and that was also, that taught me a lot. um, that could be a whole other podcast in
Of
itself.
course. Yep.
um,
I've no doubt.
but that's when I'd come back and I'd be swiping on the apps, and it's like no, 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 no. And
Yeah.
then finally it shows you this, like, a couple, and you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is peculiar. I've never seen this before. I didn't ask for this. but
Right.
but tell me more. And I find that that's how so many people find me on TikTok too. They're like, this isn't for me, but I'm really curious to know, like, tell me the story. How did you get
Exactly.
here? um, and so that's honestly how it all started for me. Not to say it's a gateway, but
Yeah, yeah.
it certainly was for me, because I found that it fit me. It
Right.
it ended up suiting who I am as a person, how I love, um, and and how I want to live life, right? So I came across these unconventional relationships and just started asking questions. And the more I learned, the more I saw that every relationship dynamic was different. They all had different rules, different boundaries, different setups, different needs and desires. And the one thing that they all really had in common was that they were obviously very much in love with each other and had the
Mhm.
utmost respect for one another. And their relationships were always rock solid. And I found this just absolutely fascinating. And so not only did I start matching with them and asking these questions, but then I just was like, okay, well, maybe I want to meet some of these people and see what the connection is. And that's how I got into kind of exploring as a unicorn myself, and joining other couples, or open or polyamorous dating dynamics. And that's ultimately how I met my current partners. um,
Wow.
so
For the purpose of the audience, they may not know what a unicorn actually is. So do you mind explaining that first?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah, a unicorn is a woman, a single woman that is willing to join a couple, a pre-existing couple,
okay.
for sexual experiences and exploration. Typically, it's going to generally mean that the women are bisexual and
Okay.
looking to explore that. Most of the couples that I always met were predominantly, they were always doing it for the wife explicitly. It's not something that the husband had asked for or said that he needed. It was usually something that the wife said she needed. She wanted to be able
Interesting.
to explore, but she certainly didn't want to leave her husband in order to do that. She wanted him to be a part of it.
Right.
And exploring it together was something that was very alluring for a lot of women in these relationships, and made them feel safe and comfortable. And so seeing their love on display for each other, and these men that wanted to do this for their wives, which,
Hmm.
not like it's a huge sacrifice. I mean, it's a lot of men's dreams, right? But um, genuinely speaking, most of these men, they had no interest in romantically being with any other women. They were
Right,
they were purely there for their wives.
right.
And uh, so it's interesting, and it's not like a swinging situation where there's swapping or additional couples. It's purely about the three people, one couple interacting with another woman, and
Interesting.
usually it's for fun. Sometimes it might be for legitimate dating purposes, and other times you might have a couple that is genuinely looking for a an equal third, like a throuple dynamic that we ended up in, but none of us
Hmm.
were looking for.
Right.
It just happened.
It just happened. Yeah. Look, I think I just got educated too because I did not know that there was that whole like range of things that could be happening. Kind of thing. But as I'm hearing you speak, the piece that like I'm kind of like coming back to is that this is such a and I don't want to sound like a traditionalist, but I'm going to come across like that. Is that this sounds so like non-traditional? It sounds so out there. It's so different, and it's so stigmatizing, right? Kind of thing. So I'm just curious, like okay, family, close family, family and close friends. I can see people, accepting and embracing, your family unit and your family dynamic. But what about the rest of the people, when you're going out to events or you're going, you know things for grocery shopping, for example, as a family, or do you get like those side stairs, and those kind of like those snickers or whatever, what do you experience?
It's interesting because I think, one, I think we benefit from a little bit of pretty privilege. A
Okay.
lot of non-traditional relationship dynamics, they they just don't generally look like us, or at least this is what's been pointed out to us.
Okay.
And I think it's what makes us a little more approachable as a segue to educating them, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and helping them feel comfortable, because we look more traditional on the outside. We we all have jobs, we're all clean cut, and we're all just young, fairly pretty people. Not to sound vain, but it is one of those things that I think has helped us actually spread more awareness. And really, how
Yeah.
we are met in public with most people is like, I didn't know that was an option. Like, this is an
Okay.
option? Are you serious?
Yeah.
And we don't get a ton of looks. I mean, we do, but it's usually very obviously looks of envy or just looks of trying to figure it out. And if we see people that are too confused, sometimes we'll maybe mess with them a little bit. If we're at a restaurant, for example, and there's three of us, and maybe at one point in the meal, I'll be holding my partner Will's hand, and then I'll get up to the bath to go to the bathroom, and then he'll hold Paige's hand across the table, or he'll give her a kiss, just to see, like, oh, does she know? And then I come back to the table, and then I'll kiss Paige, and then they're like, oh, wait, they're all in on it. So we do kind of enjoy messing with people a little. It's become one of our favorite things to do, particularly when we are met with any sort of looks. But by and large, we have found that people really don't care. They see
Yeah.
us When they see us, particularly in a normal space, doing normal family things.
Yeah.
They just see us as a family,
Right.
and there's enough, different family units now. Just with the divorce rate being what it
Yeah.
is, a
Yeah.
lot of kids have multiple sets of parents already. So it's maybe
Right.
not unusual to see two to four or more parents
Yeah.
at a sporting event for a child, if they've
Yeah.
got, step grandparents, or step parents, or step cousins, or aunts and uncles that might be there. So people
Yeah.
automatically assume throuple, because we're not trying to throw it in anybody's face,
Right.
particularly at an event with the kiddo. We're barely showing any signs of affection outside of just like what a normal family might do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I don't think we really get the looks there. It's
yeah,
when the three of us are maybe out on a date that it becomes very obvious that we are a unit of three, and
yeah.
most people are just like, "Oh wow, really? this we can do this? What's that like?"
Yeah, yeah,
And we're always happy to answer questions. I think that's something that we enjoy. We enjoy the education aspect so that we can destigmatize these non-traditional dynamics. It's why we started our own podcast, which we're admittedly very behind on. But that was our goal, was to just talk about, one, how we got started, how it transpired, what
yeah,
the process was like, telling our friends and family and work, and going through different stages of our relationship, and then starting to talk about other non-traditional dynamics and just how they work, so that people can hopefully, at the end of the day, just see it for what it is, which is love.
yeah.
And it's healthy love. It's in many cases much healthier, much happier love than what a lot of people are forcing themselves into if it's not right for
Right.
them.
Right. And do you, and forgive me again, I'm asking questions because I'm sure, like, these are things you're probably facing already. So I'm pretty certain it's not something that you have not been, you're accustomed to. But do you hear comments like, "Oh, this isn't going to last," or, "Let's see what happens"? Is that something? Is that a common refrain that you hear?
All the time, not to our face ever.
Okay. All
Most
right.
people in public are very kind, very supportive, and when
Yeah.
you can be confronted with any of us in person, you can really see the love. People tell us that all the time. And so
Right.
they immediately, like, their guard just falls down. Like, they don't have that wall of preconceived notions,
Yeah.
because they can visibly, palpably feel the love between us, and
Yeah.
that there isn't things like jealousy that are coming into play that they might immediately jump to, saying, "Oh, well,
Right.
don't you get jealous," right? But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
people all the time, particularly on TikTok, are like, "Ah, yeah, get back to me in a year when this is over, or when one of you leaves the other." And
Yeah.
people get very hung up on how long something is going to last as a measure of success in a relationship, and I personally just don't see that as a proper measure of success. I know a lot of relationships that have lasted 50 years and they've been miserable their whole lives. So I
Exactly.
don't I
Yeah.
don't define that as success. I find that as define that as imprisonment, like willing imprisonment, just
Exactly.
to conform to a norm that is convenient, right?
Right.
And so personally, I know that if this were to end at any point, I will, I know even what I've just experienced now in these last 2 years with them is so, so worth it, to know a love like this, to know the support like this, to be seen like this,
Yeah.
and valued like this, and to have my kiddo grow up with this kind of love and support,
Yeah.
and understanding, and the growth that it has challenged us all to achieve, both individually and as a unit together as a family.
Yeah.
That will have all been worth any sort of pain of a broken heart. And let's face it, all relationships end one way or another, whether they're traditional or not. And
Yeah.
just because it is a traditional path, that doesn't mean it's going to last forever either.
Right.
We see relationships end every day. We see people heal from broken hearts every day. I never thought I'd be so devastated as I was after my divorce.
Yeah.
Never thought I would love again. Never thought I'd date again. Never, I couldn't fathom the thought of starting over. And now that I've been through that and I've done that, I know that not only can I, um, but that it's almost always going to lead me on to, a path that I'm meant to be on, a path I'm meant to explore, a love that I'm supposed to experience,
Yeah.
that is going to enrich my life in a different way. So I think of this love as just, I will hold on to it much as I can for as long as I can, and enjoy it while it
Yeah.
is mine to hold, you know. But if it's okay if it doesn't last forever. That is the goal, just like it is with any relationship. Our goal is to see each other to the graves, you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um it doesn't, it just doesn't, that fear doesn't sit in any of us.
That's amazing. And the more I'm listening to you, you're kind of like connecting me back to Hinduism, believe it or not, not from a culture perspective and a relationship perspective, but from an energy perspective. In Hinduism, energy is really what you consider to be divine, right? And the connection you have back to energy is what connects you to a higher being. And what I'm hearing you say is the energy between the three of you is what's really the connection,
Yeah.
and
No, it is.
that positive energy is what's really holding the three of you together in such a positive, constructive way. And that's what's the differentiating factor in my mind, at least as I'm hearing you talk. Basically, I don't know if that's making sense to you, but that's how I'm
Oh, it
interpreting it.
absolutely does. In fact, I'm smiling so big because the Bhagavad Gita, it
Yeah.
spoke to me at a very young age.
Is that right?
Yes, and I'm not a religious person, but
Yeah.
I was like, the this embodiment of energy and way of thinking is the stories just resonated so strongly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does resonate really well. I got giddy a
That's
little
great.
bit, so now
We found a connection here also between the two of us in that sense, right? About
yes,
we have something in common, right? But I want to move to something more pragmatic for a second now.
yeah,
Uh, so I grew up, my parents were, obviously there, but I have four siblings who are much older than me. So when I was a young kid, I remember having to navigate not just my parents, but also navigating my siblings, because my sister's like 16 years older than me, so she was almost like a parent to me in a way as well, right?
yeah,
So I learned how to navigate and get things my way when I wanted things to happen my way or to get things done. So um, for your kiddo who has to navigate not one, not two, but three parents, um, are you seeing something similar happening with him in the sense of how he's navigating across the three of you?
he knows how to play each of us for sure. But what I've loved about watching their relationships evolve is that when I first introduced them, I just introduced them as my friends,
Yeah.
and we were going to hang out because I thought I knew they had a lot in common and they wanted to
Yeah.
meet him. And uh, so he got very close to them as friends to start,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons why he was so thrilled when I told him that we were actually all in love, and that, you know, seeing how he would feel about that. And his first response was, "When can they move in?" And it was adorable. But watching their relationship evolve, there are
Yeah.
things that he is super comfortable telling Will, as the man in the relationship, that I know he's not going to be as comfortable telling me. And he
Mm.
spent a lifetime with me already. I
Yeah.
am I am squarely mom. I can't identify with his preteen, life and wants, but Will and Paige, having started as friends first, he tells them a whole host of other things, that he will
Mm.
eventually tell me. It always comes full circle. I just have to kind of allow it, to
To
like
happen. Yeah.
have him come to it in his own time of when he's comfortable having a conversation with me,
Yeah.
where he doesn't get embarrassed, because I go in on these like mini TED Talks with him. I go into parenting mode, and so he knows he's going to get that if he comes to me first, but he can go to Will and Paige and just have a more relaxed conversation, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But from different views, and so he connects with both of them on different levels, and he respects both of them.
Yeah.
So sometimes I know that if I push for something else, if I've already asked him about his homework, about his chores, or about fencing,
Yeah.
or just even about his day, I can't ask anything else. He's gonna shut down. He's gonna be like, I don't want to talk anymore, Mom.
Yep, yep.
But he'll go and tell them everything in detail. It's like a brand new, fresh conversation, and that's
Right.
how I get all the good info. So
Hopefully, he's not listening to the podcast. So, but we don't give away
no,
the secrets here.
yeah,
So,
no, but it's really been incredible watching them not only develop as parents, but him develop his love for them in different unique ways, just as I love them in different and unique ways, right?
right.
Our
Yeah,
love is not the same, but it
yeah.
is equal. And it just it it reinforces the beauty of polyamory in so many ways, and that I don't have to be jealous that my son loves both of them or that he tells them different things, because we each get to connect with him on a different level. We each add to his life in different and unique ways. I can't
Mhm.
be all of it and be a
Right.
good mom,
Yeah.
and they can't be all of it either, but collectively we all contribute so much value to him,
Hmm.
and him to us, that it's just it works really, really
Amazing.
well.
Amazing. So how does decision making work in that situation, right? Because you know, you said you feel very comfortable in how and not feel like insecure about your partner's parenting with your son. But when it comes to making specific decisions about or for on his behalf,
Mm.
um, is it a democracy? Is it a we can talk about it, but you're the final decision maker? How does that work in your case?
Yeah, no,
Oops.
it's definitely a
I
democracy, and um, we that includes his biological father as well, my ex-husband.
Right.
So we're always collaborating as a team, not only with the three of us, but with his dad as well, on what's the best way to go about something. And fortunately, we have a wonderful kid. He does well in school. The emotional IQ on him is just off the charts. He's confident and funny and charming, and like I'm a mom gushing over my kid, obviously, but um,
As you should. So
he doesn't. He's not a troublemaker, and so it's pretty rare when we all have to circle up and be like, okay, how are we going to address this? How we need to change the behavior. We need to implement some sort of you know repercussions for something that has happened, right? Like if he's
yeah,
failed a test or something.
yeah.
uh, and we just collaborate so that we're all coming from a unified front,
Hmm.
and he knows it's taken seriously by everybody involved.
Right.
uh, and I don't really get more say than anyone else. What I do bring is maybe just a little more perspective of having known, Will and Paige have the benefit of having known each other for 10 years. I have the benefit of having known the kiddo since birth as well.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it's like that's where I come in with just the benefit of knowing how he's going to handle a given situation and how he
Right.
might best respond. And
Yeah.
so we balance what our ideas are for how to address something with that information, and with how
Right.
his dad is going to want to also influence that decision making.
Of course, makes sense. And I'm assuming. So you, please correct me if I'm wrong. But it doesn't always fall on you to be the one giving, say, some strict feedback. It could be any one of you doing it. I would
Yeah,
imagine, right?
yeah, it definitely is. And in fact, I've sort of defaulted to letting Will do that more, just because it it seems to hit harder,
Hmm.
just and maybe that's just that male influence at home. Plus, I'm a sucker, so like you said, my kid knows how to play me and pull on those emotional heartstrings to get what he wants.
Yeah.
and I want to give him the world.
Of
So
course. Hey,
it can be very hard for me to be too strict with him. But thankfully, like I said, he's a good enough kid. We genuinely don't have to do that very often.
yeah,
It really only takes an occasional heart to heart, and a lot of times
yeah.
we will have those separately with him. We'll each take our turn kind
Mm.
of giving our perspective so that it doesn't end up being like a quorum coming up against him, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's overwhelming for
uh,
any child. Even with two
yeah.
parents, it's very overwhelming. So, yeah,
So and we'll all kind of take our own approach but deliver the same message, right?
right, right. It makes a lot of sense. And kind of, what is so you know energizing for me in listening to this conversation is that everything you're talking about is normal.
Yeah.
Every family's facing that at the end of the day, right? In some form, shape, or fashion. It just so happens that you're doing it as a group of three, as versus a group of two or one in this case, right?
Yeah.
So I call this podcast, the next frontier in insights, but I actually have a newsletter as well called In Search of Normal.
Oh,
And originally I was thinking about naming the podcast the same thing too, because when I was living internationally and everything, I always felt like I was the outsider, and I'm looking at what's considered to be normal in that culture, and I
yeah.
always was feeling like, what's my normal? What is my normal? And I couldn't figure it out, right? Until I kind of like felt comfortable in my own shoes to say, and in my own skin to say, okay, I'm also normal. I just have a different normal than you or somebody else,
Yeah.
right? But that need to search for kind of thing, is, I think all of us have it, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying, when I hear you speak, I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, you guys are so normal.
Yeah, we,
So,
we really are. And
you know,
that's what most people tend to learn real quickly when they're confronted with us in person, is that like, oh yeah, this works. This doesn't
exactly.
seem off. Like nothing about this seems strange now that I see it in person, because it is. It's just is normal. Like we're all carting kids around and doing work and chores and
Yeah,
household stuff and cooking and grocery runs and commuting to
yeah,
work. We're doing all the same things, and there's always that desire to find belonging, right? And
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's why people strive for normal, is because it offers them that sense of belonging and safety. And so if you're not confident and secure in who you are, no matter what that looks like in relation to normal, then
yeah,
you are more inclined to seek out something that fits a mold that is not going to offend anybody, right?
right.
And in this case, we've just I do think in a certain way, thruples of all the non-traditional polyamorous uh, dating dynamics are probably the most palatable
Hmm.
for traditional heteromonogamous families, because and it's one of the reasons why we call ourselves a thruple versus a triad. If we talk about how we market or brand what we are,
Yeah,
most polyamorous units would refer to themselves as a triad, and it didn't feel like us. Um, and thruple felt, since we all came from very heteronormative backgrounds, it felt more
yeah,
comfortable to us to be closely associated to the word couple.
yeah,
But when we
yeah.
say thruple, people immediately get it. Whereas if you say triad, people don't really know what
They
that
don't.
means. It could be a gang for all they know.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah,
so even we have found that desire to make it as normal as possible,
yeah.
while just being true to who we are.
Exactly, exactly. So let me. I'm going to again segue a little bit now. And now I'm very curious to hear from your perspective. I want to talk about now, marketing and branding and stuff like that. So like all, every one of us, we all watch TV advertising and see, different storylines on ads and things like that. You know, I was just doing a bit of a look, over the last couple of weeks, and in preparation for this podcast, and I was thinking about what do I see? I see, I see families, for, a product, in the background or whatever. They may show multicultural families or interracial families. They may even show same-sex families in some
Mhm.
instances, right? But do you see, what do you see? And do you see, the advertising resonating from a family perspective, given your family dynamic and your family structure?
Not yet. Not from an advertising point of view, or branding of products, but we have started to notice it in more mainstream media, like TV shows and movies and stuff like that, where we have seen thruples represented and we have seen polyamorous dynamics represented, with a
Mhm.
lot more regularity.
Yeah.
And in what I'm most proud of is the kind of removing the sexual stigma from those relationships,
Yeah.
because so many people, that's like kind of their first assumption and their
Right.
first, inclination of like that's not appropriate to be branded for because it's a sexual thing, right?
Right. Right.
So I think movies and TV shows taking on that approach of let's showcase the love part. Let's showcase the normalcy of these relationships and how they do actually function and
Yeah.
operate and add to the family unit,
Yeah.
um, so that people can see it as something that is not just hypersexualized. And then I do hope that that will translate to branding, more
Mhm.
towards those non-traditional families. Like I said, and as you mentioned, the conventional family of a mom and dad and two kids, only 18%, right? And
Yeah.
nowadays, honestly, if we're to market towards the majority of families, it would include a mom, a dad, a stepmom, a stepdad,
Yeah.
stepbrothers. It would look very much like a polycule,
Yeah, exactly.
um, because
Right.
ideally, as a family, they are all still there, to love, the children in this case, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so who's to say what that does actually, what that representation actually looks like? But in reality, it does include more than one mom and one dad in the majority of cases.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of the reason why I think, advertising is lagging, it's not because they're stuck in the past. I think it's the complexity of what you just talked about. Because when you try to break down the data, first of all, it's hard to get the data. It's not
Yeah,
that easy, right? You have got step families, parents involved. You got multi generational families. You have interracial families, same sex families, single households. The list is fairly long, right?
yeah,
So what do you focus on? And it's not as if, like, 18% may still be the majority among this diversity of options, right? But it's not a majority by a long shot, kind of
yeah,
thing, right? So I think that's where that complexity factor comes in. And and then, even if you think, if you bring in, like, who do you actually, make the hero within the family, right?
yeah,
How would that work? Like in your case, for example, like, we were just before we started the podcast, you were mentioning about, Will, we were talking about how stigma was, how it started with me, and why I got into this was around hearing aids, right?
yeah,
And then you told me something that, if you feel comfortable sharing, feel free to share
yeah.
at this point. So, you know
Yeah. Will this year he got his hearing aids, after 5 years in the Marines as a infantry machine gunner.
yeah.
It did a lot of damage, and he's 100% disabled from that. And so it was really important that, uh, we didn't want him missing out on conversations, and we were noticing that happening more and more.
Yeah.
And I watched my father, who is 93, refuse to get hearing aids for decades, and his dementia has escalated, um, just beyond any sort of level of, quality of life that I would
Mhm.
hope for him, right?
Yeah.
And he's been on the outside of a lot of conversations for.
Oops, I we lost your sound. No. Oh, there you are. You're
That's
back. You're back.
we did not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't want that for Will, and
Yeah,
it was really important that he did that, and it, he he got it done. He did all the legwork, and they've changed his life.
amazing. And the reason I brought this up again, is that in this case, he's the recipient of hearing aids, and but the two of you were the heroes in terms of trying to help him get to that stage, right? So again, from a, I think about, I spent 2.5 years working for a hearing aids company, and I remember having lots of conversations about how can we market and how do we communicate hearing aids, and the biggest issue was stigma again,
Yeah,
right? So how do destigmatizing a brand, or in this case, you're destigmatizing a family unit. The conditions are almost identical in that sense.
yeah, and I would argue I don't think that we were the heroes in that. I think that
No.
Will was the hero for doing it,
Okay,
because he had to make the choice, and
that's true. Yeah.
he had to be willing to do it and do it for himself and
Yeah.
for us, and that was an
Uh-huh.
ultimate show of love for not only himself, and self love is where everything really has to start,
Yeah.
but also for us as the family, because he knew it was important to us. So
Uh-huh.
I admire him so much, because I know countless men, and again, my father included, who I love dearly, who were just too stubborn to ever do it. So no
Yeah.
matter how heroic their partners or family members' attempts might have been to try to get them to get hearing aids, and whether
Mhm.
they were successful or not, it's up to the individual to be the hero in actually going through with it, and wearing
Yeah.
them with regularity, and not being ashamed in public. And I'm so proud of him every time we go out and he's got his hearing aids in, um, because it takes a very secure, strong man to not let that feel like it impacts his ego or his masculinity or his
Mhm.
strength. And so, yeah, it makes him our hero, honestly.
There you go. There you go. Well, look, I completely agree. And you actually changed my mind on that, because at the end of the day, you're right. The person who has the issue is the one who has to accept it and do something about it. But getting that person to do that is the hard part, right? That it's a
It is,
journey.
yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but there are actually statistics around that for hearing loss. The average time from recognizing you have a hearing loss problem to actually acting on it and doing something about it is 7 years in the US.
Oh my gosh. It's too
Oh yeah,
long.
it is too long, but that's the reason why only 1 in 3 people with hearing loss actually wear hearing aids in the US, and globally it's 1 in 5, right? So it is an issue, and that's the reason why when people talked about stigma, I got so fascinated by it because I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that is so like psychological, it's so emotional, it's so behavioral. It's ripe for deconstructing and figuring out how do you solve for that. And
Yeah.
that's why I've been on this journey for the last 2.5, 3 years, thinking about brands and stigma, and destigmatization as a pathway to move forward, basically, kind of thing.
Yeah, and not only does it add, to your cognitive quality of life, and longevity, but your actual
Yeah,
lifespan too. So again,
absolutely.
he's given us that time back,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
enjoy him at his best, and he's given himself that back. And he's 32 years old. That's a young age for many people to get hearing aids, unless you were born with some sort of hearing impairment.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's, again, it just adds to why I'm so proud of him, because most people, as you said, would wait until they're 50 or 60 and all the damage is much
yeah.
further, progressed, and it's going to be harder to have those long-standing beneficial impacts of it. So he took
Right.
care of it, very early on, and has been really good about it ever since, and it's been life-changing. So
Amazing,
uh,
amazing. Kudos to him. And if you all ever need to talk about this stuff, reach out to me online
yeah,
offline. We can certainly talk, for hours about this stuff. I do have a couple more questions to kind of like
yeah,
round this off towards the end. You started the whole conversation by saying that you're actually a dating coach right now, right? So I want to
yes.
touch a little bit on that. Tell us about and you mentioned, did I hear you right in saying that you're specifically helping with polyamorous situations? Did I hear you right on that or not?
I specialize in it. Yeah,
You
I
specialize in
don't
that.
I don't solely work on it. In fact, I would say at least 60% of my clients are in a more traditional landscape. So I
Okay.
help with very conventional dating as well,
Yeah.
from everything, from building a dating profile on the apps to your app behavior, your app strategy, because I do believe dating has to be done with a strategy, and our profiles are kind of like our personal resumes. Uh,
Yeah.
that if you want to land your dream partner in your dream relationship, you have to treat it as though you're trying to land your dream job.
Yeah.
And you have to work at it just like if you want to be good at anything in life. You have to put in some practice and you have to put in some strategy, and
Hmm.
some drills and some skills, right? You can't just wing it and expect to have good results and expect for magic to land in your lap, because
Right.
unfortunately it just doesn't happen that way for most people. And that's why people get stuck on a cycle of having bad dating experiences, and then they want to get off
Mhm.
the apps and start all over, and then they
Yeah.
abandon dating altogether. They say,
Yeah.
no, there's no person out there for me, they're all terrible nowadays. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
It is true that it is a numbers game, and you have to go through a lot that aren't going to be right for you. But every time you do go through that, you are getting that much closer to those that are right for you. And when
Yeah.
you're employing the right kind of strategy, in that approach, whether it's a conventional one or a non-traditional,
Yeah.
um, in the non-traditional, I do typically help existing couples that are trying to transition into something that's, maybe not as traditional. And that's
Yeah.
usually because people are getting to a certain stage in life where they realize, I've probably been bisexual my whole life and I've never done anything about it. And I feel like
Right.
something's missing, even though I love my partner, and, I have no desire to leave this relationship. But, after so many years, you start to want to prioritize different parts of your life and different parts of your personality that haven't
Hmm.
gotten a chance to live yet.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you're consistently suppressing parts of your goals, your dreams, or who you are, um, that part of you deserves to be seen and recognized and validated. And so a lot of those couples will come to me saying, like, how do we start this? We love each other enough. We want to give this to each other,
Yeah.
in the sense of, I want all of my partner's buckets to be filled, because I know I can't fill them all. I love Will in a very different way than Paige loves Will. And
Hmm.
Will loves each of us in different ways. And we love each other in a completely different way than we love Will, right? That
Hmm.
sapphic love, that love between women is
Hmm.
very, very different. And it's so hard to explain because not enough people know what it's like. But if
Yeah.
you are a woman who thinks they might be bisexual or has always been drawn to women's personalities, um, even that can tap into a whole other side of your happiness and fulfillment in life that so many people are craving, particularly when they've reached later stages in life, particularly when they've either gone through divorce. I help a lot of people fresh out of divorce. I help people that are going through retirement and they're like, well, what do we do with our time now?
Yeah.
Maybe we
Exactly.
date other
Yeah.
people, but we do it together.
Yeah.
Or empty nesters, that are like,
Mm.
we've done our due diligence and we've raised our children and they're out of the house, but now we want to go back to having fun. How do we do that? There's so much we want to do.
Right. Right.
And, so there's a million and one ways to do it. And I not only use my own experiences in helping others with that, I draw on my over a decade of experience in strategy, and then the collective knowledge that I've gained from my TikTok followers and all the different relationship dynamics that have approached me and told me their stories,
Yeah.
that I've also been able to learn from. That are just, I think it's beautiful when people find whatever relationship dynamic and agreement, a relationship agreement, works for them and sees both of those consenting members or all of those consenting members of that relationship happy and fulfilled for the long term, it can be beautiful.
Amazing, amazing. I don't know if you know, but we're already past an hour, and we could
No,
keep on
it's
talking
easy
for
to
the
do.
next hour too if you wanted to. But I do want to end with one last question to you. If there's one thing that you hope people can take away from our conversation today, it is finish the sentence.
To relish every vibe in life, find a way to live who you are, so that you can relish every part of your life, because it's
Amazing.
too short otherwise.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So, if people want to find you, Cam, where would they find you?
Easiest place is TikTok, which is at relish.every.vibe. Um, that's where I'm most active. I also have Instagram and YouTube, which is at Rev Dating, REV Dating. I'm not as active on there, but if anything ever happens to TikTok, I will move over officially. Going back to timing and scheduling, I don't have time to do multiple apps. It's all encompassing sometimes. So,
I hear
uh,
you. I hear you. Yeah, mine
and
is LinkedIn. So,
yeah, I'm also on there, just not very active. And then I do have my website, which is just revdating.com.
amazing. Well, Cam, this has been an incredible conversation. I know I learned a lot. I know our audience has
Oh,
learned a lot
good.
as well.
It's
I'm
been my
sure,
pleasure.
it's been phenomenal. So thank you so much for being here. For you know, this is truth be told, I was so unsure about how to have this conversation with you because it is outside
Yeah.
my worldview of how things have been for me at least. So my curiosity was, I want to learn. I just want to learn and
Yeah.
see what it's like, and I just felt it was so incredible listening to you talk right now. I know I learned a lot for sure, so thank you so much for
Oh,
that.
I'm so glad to hear it, and I'm always, always happy to have conversations with curious minds. I think one of the best ways that we can express love as humanity is to attempt to understand each other, right?
Exactly, that's exactly right.
And coming to conversations that are completely outside someone's comfort zone, when you can come with that genuine curiosity and respectful curiosity, I, I'll never shy away from those questions.
Fantastic. Well, fantastic. So, just for everybody else, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be back on air live. I have Dr. Evelina Curtis, who's going to be coming on. We're going to be talking about AI. No surprise, that's what I talk about a lot right now. But this is not from a large language model perspective. She's actually on the forefront of working on the hardware side of it, where the energy used is actually like 1/10 of what's currently being used. So they're working on like
Wow.
neuroprocessing and bioprocessing, which is a new space right now. So again, I don't know much about it. I'm not the tech guy, but
Fascinating.
exactly right. So something to listen in on. So that's going to be on September 26th. So I hope you guys can join us then too. And thank you so much for joining today. Have a good time, everyone.